Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Co-op Live this evening, and just giving people time to get into the meeting room. There's still quite a few people waiting to come in, but thank you very much for joining us this evening. There we go. So, my name's Emma Hoddinott. I'm Assistant General Secretary here at the Co-op Party. Thank you very much for joining us for our Co-op Live this evening on a really interesting topic for a lot of us, actually. I'll touch on that in a minute, but I'll just do the bits of housekeeping that we need to do. So first off, this is being recorded. We do record our Co-op Lives and we put them onto our YouTube channel so people who can't join us this evening can go and watch it later on. If you don't want to appear on that, then turn your video off. It's always nice to see you, but if you don't want to appear on the recording, then please do switch that off. We do have closed captioning available. It's down in the options down at the bottom of Zoom, and you'll be able to use that if needed as well. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Really, we're going to keep you all on mute, but there'll be an opportunity to ask questions, or you can type questions in the chat as well as we go along, so you don't forget anything. So I'm going to introduce our panel for this evening, and then just touch a little bit on the topic in hand. So we're looking at recipe for success. So how do children and young people access food in their communities? And we're going to hear from Alison Scowen, who's Head of Public Affairs at the Co-op Group. We're also going to hear from Jake as well, who's founder and director of Food Save. Now, I had the privilege of listening to Alison and Jake talk about this report at Labour Party conference, of all places, along with Barnardo's, because this was a really important bit of research that they did that really highlighted some of the issues around young people struggling to access healthy food choices in their community. And I think what was really interesting about this, and we don't have them here with us this evening, but when I first heard about the report, they actually brought in the young people who had been really involved in this report. And actually, this is not just a report about the things that matter to us as a cooperative, as cooperators, but the way it was done, the fact that it was co-designed with young people. And when they originally released the report, we heard from the young people themselves telling us about those issues. I think very much spoke to the way that we do these kind of things, and that they were integral to creating and designing the report and highlighting the issues that matter to them, rather than us as older people kind of assuming what those issues are. And I really like the way that this is being carried out by Co-op and Barnardo's. But I won't steal too much of Alison's presentation. I do apologise. But she is going to share some of that. There's some shocking figures in that as well. But through that, actually, the report gives us some really tangible recommendations, and actually recommendations we can take forward at a local level. And we'll hear a bit of that from Jake as well. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Alison to speak about the report.
Oh, thanks, Emma. Can people see my slides? Do I need to reshare them? Emma?
Yes, I can see you, but no slides.
Right, okay, let me share my slides. Oh, okay. Oh, this is embarrassing. They were being shared before. Me.
So we've tested this.
Yeah,
but yeah, technology might let us down.
One participant can share at a time. Oh gosh.
Right, do you want to try sharing?
Do you know what? I'm just going to do it without the slides. That will
Okay, then.
that will work absolutely fine. So, hi everybody, Alison Scowen. I am head of public affairs at the Co-op Group, and I work with Paul Gerard, who's our director of campaigns and public affairs, who some of you may have come across. Within the Co-op Group, I focus my job title, Life Services. I focus particularly on our funeral business, but I also lead our social mobility campaigning. Which is why I am particularly involved in the Barnardo's partnership. So to tell you a little bit about the partnership, it was launched in May 2023, and we launched the partnership to try and bring local communities together to support positive futures for, well, the target is 750,000 10 to 25-year-olds. It is a fundraising partnership, so in conjunction with Barnardo's, what we've been doing is raising money across co-op locations, food stores, funeral homes, raising money to deliver services in 20 locations around the UK. But it's also an advocacy partnership in that what we're trying to do is to take the learnings from those 20 locations and to understand what's needed at a local level and to try and develop scalable solutions. As Emma alluded to, kind of a key component and a key approach within the partnership is that the services have been designed and co-created with young people and tailored to local needs. This is absolutely, an ethos that runs throughout the partnership. And these 20 locations are looking at a range of activities, mainly focused on food, well-being, and building life skills in safe, supportive environments. 20 locations were all chosen on the basis of some of the most deprived communities and where we thought we could do something to really make a difference. But as I said, advocacy is a key element of the partnership. We wanted to use, as we have done with previous campaigns, we wanted to use the insight to come up with recommendations and practical ideas that could work at a local level. The development of the insight that I want to talk about is based upon a huge amount of feedback from young people and from co-op members. So we have talked directly to co-op members and got insight from over 10,000 of them. And we did a really exciting piece of research with an organisation called Votes for Schools, which I highly recommend them if you're ever looking at any kind of public policy work. They take ideas into primary schools and into secondary schools and get young people to vote on them. And we got over 60,000 young people contributing to our research. And what young people told us is that unsurprisingly, getting good, nutritious food in the places and spaces that matter to them is key to getting on in life. So it is food as the foundation, food as the prerequisite in order for young people to thrive. And we were really keen to fill in a policy gap because a lot is known about food in the home, a lot is known about food at school, and we wanted to fill in that gap in knowledge and policy about food in the community. And just some quotes, actually. I was going to, if I had the slides, I'd show you, but sometimes they don't let young people in. I went into the food bank with my friend and they didn't let us get anything. They saw us as inappropriate. I think even if young people are being disruptive, it's important to give them a chance. My message to food banks across the country would be to give young people a chance. Most of us aren't rude and disrespectful. Me and my brother used to do the holiday food programme when we were younger, but I think that we can't be bothered to do it now. It's a bit cheesy and it's a bunch of primary school kids. We don't want to be doing that because it's a bit weird. I like places where families or friends can hang out and eat together, like a comfy place with cats maybe. That's really important. We need a membership card that gives targeted discounts and rewards to young people, especially care experienced young people moving into semi-independent accommodation. And that was a co-op young member. So the report recommendations that we came up with, and sifting all of the information in the insight. And we were steered by a youth advisory group of 8 young people who co-created the report and came up with the recommendations. And the first recommendation is about what local authorities and government can do. Local authorities should establish a local food partnership in every area, directly involving young people from the outset. The government should review how it could support this, learning from the legislative initiatives in Scotland and Wales. What retailers can do, and we were very clear, this is not all about what government can do or local authorities can do. There are things retailers can do. So what retailers can do, consider ways in which 16 and 17-year-olds can access discounted food by amending the terms of their retail discount schemes or considering the introductions of other discounts. So just as a little bit of an insight, Co-op is one of the few retailers that offers membership and member prices discounts to 16 and 17-year-olds. Other retailers such as Tesco, Sainsbury's and Asda don't do that. You might argue that that is a form of age discrimination. It's certainly unfair. And some recommendations for Westminster. Westminster ought to set out plans to address holiday hunger after the holiday activities and food programme ends in March 2025. So that date is looming, including efforts to increase uptake and extend eligibility. Next recommendation, make food available to young people in existing after-school clubs and youth services, including in family hubs and the proposed Youth Future hubs. Consult young people on food provision and on opportunities to develop cooking skills in their services. This is one of the things that we found, that young people just wanted to be heard. They wanted, when services were designed, when services were delivered, they wanted to be involved in the design of those services. If they were going to be made available to them. And also that they thought that food was a really important part of a service. So if there is a club, if there is an activity, food was a great way of bringing people in and making the service work effectively. Fifth recommendation, interesting one, to remove the reduced rate for under 25s in universal credit to ensure young people can afford the essentials. Kind of obvious, if you're under 25 and you're living independently, life isn't cheaper. So why should there be a reduced rate for under 25s in universal credit? And we drew a bit of a parallel on that to some of the work which has gone on with national living wage and reducing the age banding. And finally, sixth recommendation is about reviewing the Healthy Start scheme to ensure its value is adequate and uptake improves, because we know throughout the country and many local authorities will report low levels of uptake of the Healthy Start scheme. So in particular, I just want to go back to the first recommendation of the local food partnership. And that is that councils should support the establishment of a local food partnership in every local authority area, bringing together local government, businesses, community groups and charities to promote access to nutritious and sustainable food. And the government should review what it could do to support the development of local food partnerships. And there is some interesting work that has already been done in Scotland and Wales on this. The Welsh government brought in £2.5 million of funding in 2022 to support all their local authorities to develop local food partnerships. And the Scottish government in 2022 required local authorities to create, implement and consult on local food plans. So the interesting thing about local food partnerships is, they're very much the glue that binds all of the community activity together, and that makes the sum greater than the sum of the parts. So really been focusing on local food partnerships as a really great local solution, which local authorities should drive forward. And I know a number of Labour Co-op controlled councils have gone into this space. So Yeah, so that's the key recommendation that I wanted to bring with you today. I'm very happy to talk about the other recommendations. We are planning to do a further piece of research, which we think will publish at the end of April. We've currently got a load of freedom of information requests out to councils, to all councils, to ask them whether or not they've got a local food partnership, whether they've involved young people, how much funding and staff time they've put into it. And we're going to build into that report some examples of best practice amongst existing local food partnerships. So really, as a to bring together a compelling evidence base to try and encourage the development of local food partnerships everywhere. I think there's an interesting opportunity coming up with the national food strategy, and how local food partnerships might fit into that. If there's anyone on the call who's working in a local authority that has a local food partnership, I'd love to hear from them. And perhaps we can feature you in the report, or indeed in the event that we are planning in Parliament at the end of April. And I think I'll stop there because I want to allow lots of time for discussion. And perhaps hand over to Jake.
Thanks very much, Alison. And yes, really interesting to hear about those recommendations. I'll come back on those because they are issues that Co-op Party members and councillors have been campaigning on for a long time. And we're keen to hear your experiences as well towards the end. But I'll hand over to you first, Jake.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. So my name's Jake Bonetta. I'm the founder and director of an organisation called Food Save CIC down in the southwest of England. I'm also a Labour and Co-op member and used to be a councillor in Devon as well. So Food Save, I established it in 2020, right in the midst of the COVID pandemic, with a couple of friends. All of us were pretty young, pretty much school leavers at the time. And it's an initiative to prevent food waste in local communities. As I say, it started off in one town, my hometown of Honiton, in 2020, and now it works across 3 local authority areas, delivering 5 different services, all the way from the University of Exeter to the smallest villages in the most rural areas of Devon. In the 2024 calendar year, across our 5 locations, to give a sense of the scale of the organisation, we redistributed 82.9 metric tonnes of food to families across that area, which was worth about £260,000 going into people's pockets, and also had a CO2 equivalent saving of 265,000 kilos of carbon dioxide, which is enough CO2 saving to allow for all of the F1 cars in a single F1 race to go for the entire time. So there is a massive role for the voluntary sector to play in this as well, and this report is extremely important in laying out a roadmap for government, for local authorities, and for retailers. And I want to sort of explain how these recommendations can be played out in practice, how local communities can respond to them and deliver on them. One of the most important points here is it's really important to create community buy-in for any of these points and anything going forward, because fundamentally local areas know their areas best. And local people know their local people best as well. So it's not a one-size-fits-all strategy. Obviously, Ali's just mentioned the different strategies that work in Scotland and Wales, and of course in various different local authorities in England. However, there would be no way that a setup in Greater Manchester would work in the Highlands of Scotland. So it's really important that local councillors get involved with these projects and with these policy asks as well, especially cooperative councillors up and down the country. We as cooperators really should take the lead on food in our local areas, And we also should ensure the viability of these organisations as well. Everyone here will know, as well as the next person, that local authorities and devolved governments are struggling across the UK, and they have been for 15 years now. And just within the last couple of months, my local food partnership that was operating in East Devon, the East Devon Food Hub, bringing all of our food banks and community larders, etc., together, has collapsed and is no longer functioning, purely because 2 members of staff at that council are no longer employed there. And so it is very easy, without the right focus and without the right attention being brought to this subject, it's very easy for it to fall off the radar of elected politicians and of council officers for various different reasons. These points also link much more widely with the whole voluntary sector and are extraordinarily relevant when talking to a whole host of people across communities. There is a lot that can be said in linking up relationships across community larders and fridges, as well as youth clubs, food banks, libraries of things, repair cafes, and community clothes swap shops, for example. And I know that Food Save, our organisation, we actually donated a community fridge to a new youth club in one of our towns, specifically to try and give younger people that ownership and community buy-in for the intake of their food, and also more knowledge around it as well. So yes, we do need to ask government of all of these things, but we also need to make sure that communities are involved and buying into them as well. So how can these recommendations be taken on in practice? So we know that in practice across the country, organisations like Food Save, 63% of our users coming to no questions asked, stigma-free organisations where anyone can turn up, 63% of people are facing direct financial need. And that includes many young people. One of our biggest demographics actually are young couples under the age of 25, either with their first kid or trying to move into their first home. And we end up supporting them with a lot of food help in sort of more urban areas, but also in rural areas. One of our community fridges also just so happens to be on the campus, the main campus of the University of Exeter. And we can guarantee that if we put 100 kilos of food in there, of surplus food that needs to be prevented from going to waste, we can guarantee that during term time, that fridge will be empty within about 45 minutes of us filling that fridge up. There is a lot of deprivation and poverty across all levels of young people in society. And there is a lot of disparity there as well, especially for 16 and 17-year-olds who may not access that quite as readily, or may not be able to. So in order to put these recommendations into practice, we need to, as I've just mentioned, ensure that local areas are looked after through policy, but make sure that they are also leading the way with their own policy. We need to ensure that grassroots campaigns are created to support food provisions for young people, and we also need to work with businesses to that end as well. So working with retailers, not only on access to discounted food, which is extraordinarily important, and working with them to change their policies to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to access food, but making sure that that actually local organisations as well, who already may have access to that food, have specific methods to ensure that 16 and 17-year-olds can access their services properly. It's also really important, as I've just touched on, to empower our young people. One of the brilliant things about the consultation that's gone on here and the way that this report has been created is it has been totally driven by young people up and down this country. And that's what makes the results so important, the recommendations so important, because all too often with policy surrounding food, but mostly around young people, policy is centrally driven. It's not written by young people, and it's not researched on by young people. And they do lose that say. They are, frankly, disempowered and disenfranchised. So making sure that they have the ability to support these recommendations, to champion these points in their communities through writing to their local representatives, writing to the local MP, but actually going ahead and setting up organisations as well, and being supported to do that and have that buy-in is so important. And also making sure, as part of that, that any organisations that are set up by young people are integrated with their young councils, the youth parliament, and their members of youth parliament across the country as well, to ensure that buy-in further, and also that political buy-in that comes with that. Not only that, they also have their links with their local schools, so ensuring that academies work with them as well. So these recommendations are really important, and they can be taken forward in practice. But obviously, anything that happens there does need to be driven by young people. With regards to the sector that I'm in specifically, obviously FoodSave, we are food redistributors, so we work slightly different to food banks. There are a couple of policy asks and sort of requests that we do have as well, and we have been working with different partners on that sort of top up from these recommendations. And there are a few further ways that we think that we could support younger people through this. For example, exploring ways to work with retailers further and more businesses to require food waste redistribution more widely. There are some programs that have been tested in the European Union around mandating businesses to redistribute their food, their surplus food, to local communities. Whether a mandate is required or not, I'm not sure, but some way to explore that side of corporate social responsibility from businesses is key. Making sure that food redistributors have a seat at local food partnerships as well. A seat at the table is really important. And ensuring that the whole voluntary sector, not just the current specific parts, have access to the specific safeguarding requirements that are going to be needed if we want to make the entire voluntary sector and food sector totally accessible to people under the age of 18. For example, my organisation, as it stands, cannot apply for full DBS checks for our volunteers under current legislation. So even small changes to DBS policy there, to policy around safeguarding, but also sort of training funding and support as well from local authorities will be key in allowing that extra buy-in and sort of involvement from younger people. Also a wider exploration of how emergency food provision works in the UK. It could be a good way to go. Exploring whether food bank quotas and financial requirements are fit following the cost of living increase. I work with a number of food banks across the region, and a lot of them have actually abandoned a lot of their targets and are working with a lot more people more closely without them. So exploring that model and whether a wider sort of more open, less stigmatizing model works better. And actually also ensuring that kids know how to cook once they've been given the healthy food that we want to give them. Through obviously the Healthy Start scheme, kids are able to access fruit, veg, and dairy products for themselves, which is extremely important. We need to make sure that adequate value and uptake is taken through that scheme. However, if younger people are unable to use those ingredients once they've been given them through failures in the national curriculum, then we need to explore that as well. So those are that's sort of a brief overview of the sector as a whole, where I think these recommendations could go. If anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them more widely on sort of how we ensure sort of young people's success around food, but also through food waste prevention as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jake, and plenty to think about there about those recommendations and how it works, and it's different to each area as well. I guess in terms of full disclosure, I'm also director of a CIC that's involved with a social supermarket, so a membership-based food bank as well, and a community cafe. So a lot of the issues that you're talking about sound very familiar, but also a different food ecosystem that we work with there. But you do need that community ecosystem really to work with and to share, because even though we're talking about food and access to healthy food, there are lots of interconnected issues with this as well, and food is often the gateway into lots of other issues and people, and helping people with regards to that. I just wanted to touch on the recommendations in the report, because these aren't unfamiliar to Co-op Party members. We have long campaigned for better access to food, and have recommended that local councils have local food partnerships, that they have a champion for this as well within the council. Going back to what you say about it not falling off the agenda, but to make sure that there is a champion on these issues on the council, that there is a partnership, and that there is a plan that partnership is working towards as well. I was quite shocked to hear about some of the discrimination. I think that the 16 and 17-year-olds access, and I think there's certainly a question for those of you that counsellors about what support there is for that age group in terms of your current food partnerships and access to food if they're struggling, for example. Just on the government ones, just literally 2 days ago, Alison, you'll be pleased to know that the government has announced the extension of the Holiday Activities Fund for another 12 months. So that will see children through Easter and summer this year, which is great news. And again, if you're a councillor and you're not aware what your local area is doing, then do ask about it. It was a great scheme. It was set up in the wake of the Co-op group, and actually the footballer Rashford raising the issue about children and food during the pandemic. So it's a really good way of addressing this issue, and Alison's going to take that as a campaign win, so that's the first one. And also on Healthy Start as the party, we've campaigned for a long while on Healthy Start and some of the issues around that. It's a good scheme, but we know it could be better, and we could see bigger take up, but there are really good examples across the country of councils and councillors really promoting that. And we've seen from the figures that actually if you do that work, you will see the numbers increase and more people get access to the support that they need. So I'm happy to open it up to questions. You can put them in the chat, or if anybody wants to wave their hand and I guess share their local experiences or has any questions for our panel, then you're more than welcome. So Kindy has sent us a nice message. She's in Coventry, she's a cabinet member. She's looking through HAF, which is that Healthy Activities and Food Programme, because we're good at acronyms here. They're looking at the strategy there and wants to connect with you, Alison. That's great. Kindy is a member of the Co-op Party NEC as well. So really good to see those connections being made. And I'll throw the first one question to you, Jake, because we've talked about CICs and we're both involved in them, but what are they? What are we talking about?
Absolutely, very good question. So simple answer, a CIC is it's an acronym for a community interest company. So if you hear of people talking about social enterprises, social entrepreneurs, those sorts of things, and usually it's because people are involved in CICs. The easiest way to explain it is it's a company that acts like a charity. So it's they're much more flexible in how they can operate, but also have a non-profit requirement as well, and a community requirement. So there are many ways. I could talk for hours about charity legislation and how restrictive it is in so many different ways. But it's a function for a wider variety of people to get involved in social good. I would say without profit being taken out of the system.
I'm on mute. Thank you very much for that, Jake, for explaining terrible acronyms. Alison, you just wanted to make a point about universal credit, and then I've got a couple of questions for you both.
Oh, sure. Well, on the universal, so one of the recommendations is that the universal credit rate ought to be equalised for under 25s. I touched a little bit on it in my presentation. I think it's really encouraging that the age banding is going in the national living wage. Actually, Co-op Group has a position that we also think that the apprenticeship rate should go, because nobody can live upon the apprenticeship rate as it currently stands. I mean, I think not a huge amount of employers pay that, but the principle stands. It is not cheaper to live because you are younger. And if the government has accepted that on national living wage, then rationally one ought to accept it on universal credit, recognise that significant budgetary costs. But I just think it's a rational point. It doesn't cost you less because you are under 25 to go into your supermarket and buy food. It doesn't cost you less to heat your house, if you are living independently. And Jake talked about the challenges of young parents, and we particularly had that in our minds, that bringing up young children when you're under 25 is going to be tough. And actually on the Healthy Start vouchers as well, the government is terrible at keeping stats in terms of who's getting Healthy Start vouchers, doesn't really know. But anecdotally, we were picking up that that young parents aren't aware of the fact that they might be entitled to Healthy Start. So is there something potentially that could be done at a local level to ensure that people are aware of their entitlements? But Emma, you're going to ask me something else.
Yes, and absolutely on Healthy Start, we've seen great examples of COP councillors putting it on leaflets, but also getting their councils to do it with their children's services, early help services, libraries, making sure that where families with young children are having contact with public services, that actually that sign up to Healthy Start is there as well. So there are things that can be done at that local level, and we have seen that difference in take up as well. So there's a couple of questions coming in. I'll take Viv's first, and then I'll go on to help. I've got a couple on the same theme, which is really interesting. So Viv's is probably to Jake about whether the Food Safe CIC is similar to the bread and butter thing, because they have 10 bread and butter things across their local authority, plus a network of food banks and a baby bank as well. Is that something you've come across, Jake, at all, the bread and butter thing? But I imagine, I imagine what we're hearing is that each local place will have different things available. But
Absolutely.
Do you link in with other food banks and baby banks and things like that?
Yes, absolutely. So short answer to the question, yes, very similar to the bread and butter thing. I believe the bread and butter thing is more, is based in a different part of the country to us. Sort of more, I think, more Greater Manchester way. But in terms of what we do, one of the problems with the food redistribution sector is it is very fragmented, because every community does their own thing, which is absolutely fantastic. But yes, it's all around redistribution of surplus food into communities, making sure that we reduce food waste, but also as an ancillary to that, prevent food poverty as well, or food insecurity. And obviously working with other organisations to that end as well. We do work very closely with food banks as well. We often give more perishable items of food like fruit, veg, cheeses, milks, etc., and breads to food banks, and they will give us a load of tins in exchange. So we do a lot of exchanges with local food banks. We also work closely with the baby bank as well. We have also just recently received a £2,000 grant to buy hygiene products for local primary schools, air cadets and scouts organisations. So we've just created massive goodie boxes for our local areas, sort of youth organisations and schools. So very similar to all of those, yes.
Thank you. I'm going to bring in Ben, if that's all right. If you can unmute Ben.
Yep.
If you just want to say whereabouts in the country you are this evening.
Yes, I'm in Croydon. So hello to everybody. And yeah, so I think one of the things that I wanted to sort of talk about my experience. So in Croydon, we don't have a food partnership, but we have. I work with an organisation that is funded by the city, City Hall, so Sadiq's office, and it's basically a London-wide food reach program that's like sort of creating food partnerships across all of London, working closely with Sustain. Through that, I've been very lucky to be able to go and visit other London boroughs who have got food partnerships and see the things that they're doing. And one of the biggest differences that I see in areas where it is really strong connections with the local authority, which I actually think, unfortunately, we are lacking severely here. And one of the things that's really kind of blown me away throughout the experience is understanding how complicated the food network in an area is, from distribution to food banks to the small groups that are really helping. And yeah, understanding that and the education around it has been really impactful for us. And also trying to find ways to make it more sustainable by teaching people like things like food growing and those initiatives. And again, promoting healthy start is a big part of it as well. So it was just really a shout out to say, really kind of putting we're just starting to get a bit more buy-in from the local authority now. They've put it onto their, we've got Conservative Council, they've finally put it onto their business plan, but really just trying to get them to take action and work with us is a hugely transformative part.
Thank you very much, Ben, for sharing your experience with that and kind of highlighting the role that local authorities can play with that. There's quite a bit in the chat, and feel free, Jake and Alison, you can reply to those. But as we're coming up to 1:45, I want to kind of ask you a final question with a couple of parts, in that we've heard a lot today. There's the recommendations, but I guess what's the one thing that a co-op councillor can take away and do, and what's the one thing that a member could do to support this? And that really sort of picks up, I think it was a question earlier on about, just an ordinary member. You're not just an ordinary member, but what can you do to help and get involved, from Heather? So what one thing could a co-op councillor do? What one thing can a co-op member do on this? Alison, Jake, I don't know who wants to go first. Do you want to go first, Jake?
Shall I go first? Because you'll steal my ideas.
Go on then.
I think there's been some fantastic work by co-op councillors in getting local food partnerships set up in their local areas. I think there are still some gaps, so checking what is there and pushing for something if it's not already there is really important. This whole report, and thanks for the kind words, Jake. Absolutely, youth insight. If you are creating services for any group, you have to talk to them. You have to design them and co-create them. It is a challenging it has been a challenging process, because quite rightly, we have been really challenged by the young people that we work with about what the co-op group itself does. But challenge is good, and challenge is how we do better. So bringing young people into your service design and your policy development is absolutely the way to go. So and you'd be surprised by some of the creativity. Actually, maybe you wouldn't be surprised by the creativity, but it was very good.
Thank you very much. And over to you, Jake. Something for co-op councillors, but something for members to take away as well.
Absolutely. So I'll start with members. First and foremost, get involved in your local community. If you have a spare hour or two on a weekend or of an evening, I know sort of time is extraordinarily valuable to people, but as cooperators, working with our community and getting involved, whether it is with a food bank or a community fridge or a community larder, will seriously help their ability to function and run. Even, for example, if you were to get involved with a local community fridge or surplus food redistributor, getting in touch with them and saying, look, I commute from A to B on a day. Do you work with any of the supermarkets or businesses en route? And can I, on my way home from work, pick up some food for you and take it to a location? So it's about, yeah, getting involved in a way that you are able to, I would suggest. For councillors, it is about that empowerment aspect, I would suggest, through obviously the council chamber, whether that's bringing a motion through to your local full council meeting, trying to get the whole council to agree that a local food partnership is really key. But further to that, empowering young people in those discussions as well, making sure that as a local co-op councillor, you are in touch with your local food hubs, but also your youth clubs and your other sort of youth organisations and schools, and sort of bringing those people together and acting as a community connector for everyone in your area, using the power that you inherently have by being an elected representative to empower young people's voices and empower the food sector is going to be key.
Thank you very much. There's still plenty in the chat. I think we've all shared our email addresses, and I know there's some specific ideas in there. Elizabeth, that community interest company that you're setting up with care leavers and cooking sounds amazing. So please do reach out on that. But I think there's certainly plenty of us to take away. Go and have a look at the report. It is quite shocking. 1 in 4 young people are struggling to access healthy food. We know there's things that can be done. We've heard some of those this evening. Both Alison and Jake have given us great ideas to take away. Certainly a key role for our co-op councillors and making sure those local authorities are linking in and helping. But actually, just as members as well, there is probably food things going on out there that we can get involved in, that we can connect with and connect as a party as well. I know certainly in my local area, our member activator at the co-op group is very active and links all the local food groups together with the membership as well, and very supportive. So there are things going on. It's just a case of us finding them and helping out as well. So thank you very much for your time this evening. Big thank you to Alison, and big thank you to Jake. Thank you very much for joining us. And we send our regards to Ali from Barnardo's as well, who unfortunately couldn't join us this evening, but you've done a good job, Alison, covering the report and what's in there. So yeah, do get in touch if you want to find out more, and hopefully we will see you at a future Co-op Live. We've got plenty of topics coming up over the next few weeks, as well as regional conferences for our members. So plenty to go on with and discuss and cooperate on. Good evening.